thank you so much again, Taylor, U of A Cooperative Extension. Thank you to all the other speakers, FSA, NRCS, Local First. A lot of great speakers and great information. Hopefully I'm going to be able to provide you some valuable information as well that would help out with financial and other resources for farmers. Yeah, my name is Sharma Torrens, and Taylor mentioned it. I do wear a couple hats, and I will tell you about that. I think it's on the agenda as the Conservation Education Director for the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts. That is one of my hats, but I'm actually talking about my other job, and it's with Central Arizona Land Trust. And I will be talking about Central Arizona Land Trust, conservation easements, and then also the City of Phoenix Farmland Preservation Program, because that's another way that farmers can be helped with financial and other resources. And first, yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, just so you get a snippet of who I am, where I'm coming from. And sometimes people like to hear this, but I'll be very brief, but then you'll understand the two hats and everything from my background. So yeah, so again, Sharma Torrens, and yeah, Taylor mentioned, and I just said I wear a couple hats, but let me tell you a bit about where I came from, so you'll kind of appreciate and understand a few things. So my two passions are really conserving agriculture and natural resources now, but I'll have to tell you how I came to be that. It was a meandering path, and it certainly wasn't a straight path, and I kind of came from an interesting background. So I was born and raised in Phoenix. So I am an Arizonan, Phoenician, and I grew up very anti-agriculture in that, you know, grew up in Phoenix, the city, didn't understand where my food came from, all I knew was, or thought I knew, I should say, was that farmers and ranchers destroyed the environment and harmed species, and again, didn't know where my food came from. I thought it appeared in Safeway. So it's kind of interesting that I come from that. But I went to ASU, so I hope we have some Sun Devils on here. I know this is a U of A webinar, but hopefully we have some Sun Devils. I can feel the energy out there. Anyways, went to ASU and biology major. So became a wildlife biologist. And so remember, very anti-agriculture, my perspective. So I worked, not that all wildlife biologists and groups I work for are that way, but I certainly was that way. So I worked for various nonprofit organizations and the California Department of Fish and Game and some other, and I moved all around. And then I went to law school to be an attorney for a nonprofit environmental. So it was all about nonprofit environmental, saving the species and the environment for me. So yeah, started with the natural resources passion, but definitely didn't have the agriculture passion until later. Anyways, I tried to work for nonprofit environmental organizations, and I probably would have worked for one of the ones that sues farmers and ranchers, believe it or not. But as luck would have it, that didn't turn out. So I worked as a civil litigator for about 7 years in California, Arizona, and DC. And I decided I hate that. I'm not made up to be an attorney. I'm more about, well, I guess I could have been a mediator, so I shouldn't say all attorneys. But I wasn't about fighting. I was about finding that middle ground. How do we all get along and collaborate and cooperate and things like that? So anyway, so left that, went to work for Arizona Land and Water Trust, and they're in Tucson, and they work to conserve agriculture and open space with conservation easements. So you're kind of getting a glimpse, because I don't know if you know with Central Arizona Land Trust, same concept with conservation easements, but that was my first background with that. That was about 9 years ago. And that's when I first got to know all the farmers and ranchers in Arizona, because they were looking to put conservation easements on farms and ranches. And so got to know all the farmers and ranchers, and coincidentally, those within the natural resource conservation districts. And so I figured out quickly that those in the conservation districts overlap with the Farm Bureau and the cattle growers. So if you're going to their meetings, you're also seeing Farm Bureau and cattle grower members. So anyways, got to know those folks. And that's when I first became educated. And I really started to open my eyes that farmers and ranchers are the original conservationists. They are the best stewards of the land. And they do care about wildlife, and they don't go around harming species and and destroying the environment. They actually care about things like that. And again, best stewards of the land. So really opened my eyes. And that's when I became a great advocate for agriculture. Then I went to work for the Arizona Department of Agriculture because Director Killian offered me a job, so I couldn't turn that down. And loved that. But now I had to leave that because then the Natural Resource Conservation District folks offered me a job as a contractor. And again, you probably remember I just said, getting to know those folks is really what started to open my eyes and my mind about how vital agriculture is to society and how great farmers and ranchers are for the environment. And so went to work for the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts. And you probably heard Arthur mention working with the Natural Resource Conservation Districts. So the Association of Conservation Districts is basically the nonprofit that supports and promotes our conservation districts. And there's 42 of them in the state. And they basically are the farmers, ranchers, and other private landowners that work to conserve agriculture and natural resources. Okay, so yeah, you can see I kind of transitioned over having a leg in both worlds, the environmental world and the agricultural world, because I know how they go hand in hand. Before I thought they were entirely separate, not so anymore. Okay, so I work for the Association of Conservation District, one hat. Other hat, yeah, working for Central Arizona Land Trust. So about a year ago, they came to me and said, can you work for us as well? So working with conservation easements again. And I was thrilled to do so because I think that's really a great way to conserve agriculture and natural resources. And I'll tell you a little bit about, yeah, CALT, conservation easements, and then again, we're gonna launch into the city of Phoenix. Oh, and one thing I should mention, I am not opposed to getting questions throughout the presentation. So put them in chat or verbally ask me. I don't mind interruptions. I'm a little ADD, so that goes well with how I think and work with these presentations. So feel free to do that. Okay, Central Arizona Land Trust. So basically, it's a community-based, nationally accredited. When I say nationally accredited, with the Land Trust Alliance, so you've probably heard of that, or some of you have. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And I have the mission up there because the mission is to preserve and protect open space, wildlife habitat, working agricultural land, so our working farms and ranches, but also scenic and cultural values of central and northern Arizona, and they're looking to preserve it for future generations. And just so you know too, Central Arizona Land Trust has been around since 1989, and generally they have focused on the northern Arizona counties. So they focused north in their work. Now they have moved down to Maricopa County. I live here in Phoenix, and yeah, I started working for them a year ago, and I'm here to also tell you about our work with the city of Phoenix. So they moved down into Maricopa County. Okay, so basically how Central Arizona Land Trust furthers its mission is with conservation easements. And I'm going to do a quick overview of conservation easements. And then I'm going to ask you, I'm going to kind of pause and see if there's any questions, because sometimes, well, no, more than sometimes, I'd say these are always very confusing if you've never been exposed to them or heard about them. It's kind of a new concept. And yeah, so feel free to jump in with any questions. But conservation easements are basically voluntary contracts between a landowner and a land trust. So let me say that again, between a landowner and a land trust. And I'll tell you why I'm emphasizing that later when we talk about funders. So it's between the landowner and the land trust. Okay, it's governed by Arizona Revised Statute 33-271. If you want to be bored to tears, go ahead and go read those. But it's governed by that statute. It's basically a conservation easement is where a landowner sells or donates their development rights. They sell or donate their development rights. But see what I put in all caps? They still own the land. The landowner still owns the land when they have a conservation easement in place. Okay, but what it means, the land cannot be subdivided. So you can't sell it to a developer. You can't develop it like you would, like a developer would want to do. They would want to subdivide it, which is tragic, I think, because they're gobbling up all the prime farms and ranches doing that too. But anyways, So the land cannot be subdivided, but it doesn't mean, because remember, they still own the land. It doesn't mean that they can't negotiate some agricultural structures into the conservation easement, because that we want to see it, and I'll go into more detail on the next page, but we want to see the conservation values remain intact of working farm and ranch. So if it's a working farm and ranch, we want it to stay viable. So yes, you can negotiate agriculture structures into. And just so you know, another tidbit I put at the bottom, governed by a deed of conservation easement. So that's the contract, remember, between the landowner and the land trust. And it's recorded in the county it's located. And I tell you that because once I tell you about one of our conserved farms, which we just accomplished recently, you can go read the deed of conservation easement if you're interested. It's recorded in the county it's located, and I'll tell you more about that. Okay, again, so I alluded to this, but the purpose of a conservation easement is to keep those conservation values intact. So if it's a working farm, it stays a working farm. If it's open space, it remains open space. If it's wildlife habitat, if it's scenic or cultural values, they remain intact. And the funders, okay, this is where, remember I said it's between the landowner and the land trust. The funders, so this is when a landowner sells their development rights because they want to get payment. And I know I have that later down lower, but I'll emphasize it again. But when they sell their development rights, they're getting paid. And so the funders are usually federal or state agencies. So NRCS happens to be one. So thank you, NRCS. But a lot of state agencies do as well. The Game and Fish Department has in the past done this. But there's other funders as well, because remember I mentioned the city of Phoenix, and I will be talking about that in just a second. But these funders are the ones that drive these conservation easements to be perpetual in nature. So I will just mention, if you go read the statute, and if you want to be bored to tears, can you read it? Conservation easements do not have to be perpetual in nature, but the funders are driving that, okay? So just remember that. So when they are forever, it's binding on whoever purchases the property and any of their heirs. So once a conservation easement is placed, it's in place forever, and it runs with the land, binds anyone else that deals with that land. Okay, and I said this above, but I'm going to emphasize it again. So if the landowner sells the development rights, they're paid money, right? So that's it. And there's a big financial incentive for doing that. And I'll go through an example just so you can see. But and I'll tell you more about that on the next page. But if they donate, remember I mentioned they could also donate their development rights. Some folks do that because they receive a federal tax incentive. And I think it was mentioned, you know, most farmers and ranchers, I think it was Rick that said this, are, you know, they don't have a lot of money. They have to diversify their income. They have to get a couple jobs. So most of them we find need to sell the development rights because we are going to help them keep their operation in place by diversifying this income and giving their income. But some folks do decide to do it for a federal tax incentive. So just so you know, and I'll give you an example on the next page. But the development rights, so those are valued based on a qualified appraised value. So I think Fred was talking about it, how they do appraisals and they help with loans and FSA and all those things. So same thing. So same thing as if you're purchasing a property, although it's far more complex, I'll tell you. But the property is appraised, and it's a full sale appraisal. So what the entire property is worth, but it's also the conservation easement value of that, which are the development rights. So the whole thing is appraised, just like you were purchasing or buying a property. But I'm going to give you a little example of this, because hopefully this will kind of sink it in about the benefits of conservation easements. Okay, and let me also mention something before I even go on to this, is that you can imagine, so if a farmer or rancher wants to see it stay as a farm and ranch and remain that legacy, if it's been in their family for generations and they want their kids to keep that going, a conservation easement is ideal because they still own the land. They can still farm and ranch it. The conservation easement, yes, it prevents you from subdividing, but it's not so restrictive you can't do anything. You could put agricultural structures or things like that. We want to see it stay as a viable farm and ranch. And we're helping them diversify their income. And so this is where I'm going to talk about the huge benefit of conservation easement, especially when you sell those development rights. So what we have been seeing lately, and I'll give you a little background. So when I used to work in conservation easements, remember Arizona Land and Water Trust, I used to see conservation easements be valued between 40 to 60% of the full sale value. So if a property is worth $1 million, we're seeing 400,000 to 600,000 is the value of the conservation easements. Not so anymore, especially with this market. We have been seeing conservation easements. This is north and south. We've been seeing this all over. 60 to 80% of the full sale value. So yeah, if we've got $1 million property, $600,000 to $800,000 that farmer or rancher is paid for giving up those development rights. So again, yeah, $600,000 to $800,000. They can still do what they need. They can still farm it or ranch it, keep it in agricultural production, and yeah, I mean, remain as a viable farm and our local food supply and all the other benefits that come along with it. Okay, so huge financial incentive there. And again, you're protecting your legacy and you're just preventing it from being subdivided, which we all want to see because, again, local food supply, healthy soil, wildlife habitat, open space, etc. Okay, donate. So let's get a little more into the donates because some folks do donate the development rights, and that's for federal tax deduction. So just to give you a snippet, so you've got some information about this in case this might work for you. So there's a major federal tax incentive for doing so, and it was made permanent in the year 2015. But basically, a qualified farmer or rancher who donates their development rights, so that means they're not paid for them. It's basically like a donation, a charitable contribution. They can donate their development rights and they will receive 100% deduction in the first year that they donate. And then 50% of their income deducted for each consecutive years up to 15 years, up to whatever equals the amount that they donated. So again, look at the $1 million property. So we've got the $1 million property, and let's say it was 60% of the full sale value based on that appraisal. So the income, so they can donate or they can deduct from their income. Let's say if their income is 100,000 a year, they can deduct 100,000 full deduction the first year and 50,000 for each year for up to 10 years. So that's quite a major federal tax incentive. So I just wanted to give you that so you have the information. Okay, and just to give you a little more of an overview of how this all works. So the land trust, so remember the funder, so I talked about this between the landowner and the land trust. So the contract is negotiated between, again, landowner and land trust. The funder comes in and just generally provides the funding. I will say, because one of the funders is on the phone, I will say that sometimes funders do want to have a say in some of the terms negotiated in that contract, that deed of conservation easement. So I will tell you that, but it is between the landowner and the land trust, that contract. And so the land trust, so to tell you there, you can kind of get a picture of where the land trust comes in. The land trust finds the funding, does all the negotiating with the landowner, but they are also the holder, I like to put that in quotes, because holder of development rights. So all that means is that they come in annually to monitor the property, and they do so with the landowner's permission. So you remember, so a lot of these funders drive these to be perpetual, forever conservation easement. So the land trust is just obligated to come in every year to make sure that that deed of conservation easement is being complied with and that there is no subdivision going on. And it's with the landowner's permission, because remember, as the farmer or rancher, you still own that land. It's your land. So we come in with that landowner's permission. And then the land trust, and again, with a forever transaction, you can imagine, there's a lot of obligations on the land trust because the funder just comes in and provides the funding. But the land trust is obligated to enforce that conservation easement. So if someone comes in and tries to subdivide it, we have to take some legal action, which might even result in court action. and we're obligated to defend it. So if someone tries to come in and purchase the property and, do something against the conservation easement, we have to defend it and enforce it. And again, it might take legal action. So the funder just comes in, provides the funding, might have some say on that contract, the deed of conservation easement, but this is basically between the landowner and the land trust. Okay, so sorry I've taken a little longer than I wanted, but I'm going to get to the meat now. Okay, the city of Phoenix. So this is the good stuff that you guys probably want to hear about most. Okay, so now I gave you an overview of what a conservation easement is. So Central Arizona Land Trust, as I told you, moved into Maricopa County. I live here in Phoenix. And now we are administering the City of Phoenix Farmland Preservation Program. So this is a great program because the City of Phoenix is very innovative, forward thinking, and I wish all the other surrounding cities would be the same. But they are looking to achieve a healthy food for all and maintain a long-term resilient food system. And just so you know, I didn't put this on the slide, but the City of Phoenix got the funds for the Farmland Preservation Program from the Coronavirus Relief Funds. And so I say I wish all the other surrounding cities in Arizona would do this too, because they also got those funds. They're just using them in different ways. So the City of Phoenix, thank God, had this forward thinking that we need to conserve these prime farms, even though surrounded by development. It's still our food. And if we're going to subdivide all our farms, what are we going to do when we have these local, food supply chain issues, which we're all seeing now? What are we going to do? We're going to be in a world of hurt if we get rid of all our food and develop it. It doesn't say that development doesn't have its place, because it does, but we just don't want to see our prime farms and ranches gobbled up by development and paved over. Because once you pave over a farm and ranch, it's gone forever. Okay, so off my soapbox. So City of Phoenix, the City Council approved $1 million towards this farmland preservation program. And they envisioned 2 to 3 farms being involved with putting a conservation easement on 2 to 3 farms. It's looking more like 2, but I'll tell you that in a second. Okay, and then the city kind of envisioned that they would provide 75% of the funding, and that Central Arizona Land Trust and its partners would look for funding in other ways. So to get the 25% from elsewhere, and that could include a donation from the landowner. Remember the donation part? There could be a major federal tax incentive for a lot of folks, or fundraising and other ways. So that's kind of how this all worked. And again, they got it from that coronavirus relief funds, and all the other Arizona cities got it. So you kind of hope that they would do the same. Okay, so you could probably tell that the picture behind me is also the picture on the slide. And this was our first project, which we just successfully completed, which we are thrilled about. So we worked on Maya's Farm, and many of you have heard about Maya's Farm. It's located in South Phoenix. It has a CSA program. It's a mainstay at farmers markets. It's a model of environmental sustainability. She's doing composting, agrivoltaic, organic, and it's used to educate students of all ages. So it's a wonderful farm that we knew we needed to conserve. So we closed in that conservation easement in under 5 months, which was really exciting, because I probably mentioned earlier, conservation easements are far more complex than buying or selling a property, because remember, if there's a forever relationship between a land trust and a landowner and anyone that purchases the property, it's got to have some pretty tight terms in that deed of conservation easement. It takes a lot of negotiating and going back and forth. But 5 months, so we did that in 5 months, very excited. So the landowner is not Maya, as many of you probably know. So the landowner, thank God, she wanted to see this farm stay conserved, and she wants Maya to buy it. So this is a scenario you probably all see that's very common around Phoenix, is that a lot of farmers are leasing land. So this can also help when a farmer's leasing land, because in this scenario, like in other scenarios, which we could work on, the landowner received the appraised value of the conservation easement development rights, which I can tell you was 70% of the full sale value. So quite a pretty penny for giving up those development rights. And remember, it's forever. So because the Maya's Farm now had those development rights stripped off of the lands, 70%, So now Maya, as the lessee, has some fundraising efforts to go in and purchase the property, and it's going to be approximately 30% of the full sale value, right? So see how that works. So if any of you are leasing land, please reach out to me. If you're in the city of Phoenix, even if you're elsewhere, maybe we could try to get the other cities to get some sort of program like this going. But see how this could work as long as we can get the landowner interested, which why wouldn't they? Because they're going to get the whole full sale of the property one way or another. They're going to get the development rights value, the 70%, then they'll get the 30% when they sell the property to lessee. And the lessee, it's far more affordable, significantly cheaper. So you see how that works? So we're really proud of that effort. It's a great effort. And yeah, there's fundraising efforts to help Maya now purchase the farm, which is wonderful. So what I would say to you in closing is, one, if you know of any landowners of farmland in Phoenix that would be interested, or if you're leasing land and you think that the landowner might be interested, please contact me, because we are looking for our next project. So one, I will say, remember I said we're going to cover 2 farms with this $1 million. We are looking for our next small farm in Phoenix. And the other thing I will mention is we are hopeful that the city of Phoenix will have $2 million next year. Now that's not definite, but we are hopeful. So this is something we can hopefully carry on into the next year. And again, hopefully some other cities will get involved in that. But please reach out to me if you have any questions. And I just wanted to put, again, the key takeaways. And I hope I hope it was clear how conservation easement works. I know it's a little confusing, but wanted you to know that as a resource and a financial resource, they're available and they're here, conservation easements. And then I wanted to tell you about the City of Phoenix Farmland Preservation Program. And again, hopefully other surrounding cities will follow suit. City of Phoenix being the model in all of this. So thank God for them. And I do want to state real quick that working in the City of Phoenix Farmland Preservation Program and closing on Maya's farm, we really had a lot of help. So not only we couldn't have done it without the City of Phoenix and their forward and innovative thinking, but we couldn't have done it without Local First and the Coalition for Farmland Preservation and all the partners involved in that. And so they're really vital to that. But with that said, I know I took a lot of time, but I really wanted to get these points across, and hopefully it was clear. Hopefully it was clear. That's what I'm hoping. And just please reach out to me if you have any questions. If you have any questions now, I'm happy to take those as well. And I thank you to Taylor and U of A Co-op Extension, all the other speakers, and yeah, all you attendees. Just thank you for listening. And I'm a talker, so if you reach out to me, I'd love to talk. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Sharma. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm just trying to stop sharing. So that was clear as mud, or either I did a great job, I'm not sure. Oh, okay, I see a question about, is there a minimum space requirement? No, there is not a minimum space requirement. However, I will tell you that I only think that we are going to be able to cover another 3 to 4 acres with this funding, because you can imagine what the price of land is right now. And so $1 million only goes so far. But having said that, if you have something larger than 3 to 4 acres, well, what if you have something smaller? That's great too. We could even focus on 3 farms with this funding. That's no problem at all. If you have a larger farm, larger than 3 acres, still reach out because, again, we're hopeful that next year they're going to have more funding and we might be able to phase it. So work on some of the acreage now, some of the acreage later. But yeah, Kendra, I saw your chat. Yeah, if it's smaller, yeah, please reach out. If it's half an acre or 1 acre, the whole goal of this is to conserve urban farms and again, focus on the long-term resilient food system. So whatever size it is, I'd say reach out to me, please. I don't know if there were any other questions, Taylor. Did I see?
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you all for the good work you're doing. Keep it up.